Ah, hello, I'm Tom Smith. I'm reading a short story called A Confidential Informant. It's by George Pelicanos, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it. Anyways, I'm going to start. I was in the waiting area of the VA hospital emergency room off North Capitol Street, singing to my father when Detective Tony Barnes hit me back in my cell. My father had his head down on the crossbar of his walker, and it was going to be a while before someone came and called his name. I walked the phone outside and lit myself a smoke. "What's going on, Verdon?" said Barnes. "Need to talk to you about Rico Jennings. Go ahead." "Not on the phone." I wasn't about to give Barnes no information without feeling some of his cash money in my hand. "When can I see you?" "My pops took ill. I'm still dealing with that, so make it 9. You know where." Barnes cut the line. I smoked my cigarette down to the filter and went back inside. My father was moaning when I took a seat beside him. "God damn this, God damn that," saying it under his breath. "We've been out here for a few hours. A girl with a high ass moving inside purple drawstring pants took our information when we came in, and later a Korean nurse got my father's vitals in what she called the triage room, asking questions about his history and was there blood in his stools and stuff like that. But we had not seen a doctor yet. Most of the men in the waiting room were in their 50s and above. A couple had walkers and many had canes. One dude had an oxygen tank beside him with a clear hose running up under his nose. Every single one of them was wearing some kind of lid. It was cold out, but it was a style thing too. Everyone looked uncomfortable. No one working in the hospital seemed to be in a hurry to do something about it. The security guards gave you a good eye fuck when you came through the doors, which kind of told you straight off what the experience was going to be like inside. I tried to go down to the cafeteria to get something to eat, but nothing they had was appealing, and some of it looked damn near dirty. I've been in white people's hospitals like Sibley on the high side of town, and I know they don't treat these people the way they was treating these veterans. I'm saying this shit here was a damn disgrace. But they did take my father eventually. A white nurse named Matthew, redhead dude with Popeye forearms, hooked him up to one of those heart machines, then found a vein in my father's arm and took these 3 vials of blood. Pops had complained about being woozy that morning. He gets fearful since his stroke, which paralyzed him on the one side. His mind is okay, but he can't go nowhere without his walker, not even to the bathroom. I looked at him lying there in bed, his wide shoulders and hardness of his hands. Even at 60, even after his stroke, he is stronger than me. I know I'll never feel like blah. I know I will never feel like his equal. What with him being a Vietnam veteran and a dude who had a reputation for taking no man's shit in the street, and me, well, me being me. "The doctor's going to have a look at your blood, Leon," said Matthew. I guess he didn't know that in our neighborhood my father would be called Mr. Leon or Mr. Coates by someone younger than him. As Matthew walked away, he began to sing a church hymn. My father rolled his eyes. "Bet you'd rather have that Korean girl taking care of you, Pops," I said with a conspiring smile. "That gal's from the Philippines," said my father sourly, always correcting me and shit. Whatever. My father complained about everything for the next hour. I listened to him, and the junkie veteran in the next stall over who was begging for something to take away his pain, and the gags of another dude who was getting his stomach tube forced down his throat. Then an Indian doctor named Siang pulled the curtain back and walked into our stall. He told my father that there was nothing in his blood or on the EKG to indicate that there was a cause for alarm. "So all this bullshit was for nothing," said my father, like he was disappointed he wasn't sick. "Go home and get some rest," said Dr. saying in a cheerful way. He smelled like one of them restaurants they got, but he was all right. Matthew returned, got my father back into his street clothes, and filled out the discharge forms. "The Lord loves you, Leon," said Matthew, before he went off to attend to someone else. "Get me out of this motherfucker," said my father. I fetched a wheelchair from where they had them by the front desk. I drove my father's Buick to his house on the 700 blocks of Cubic Street, not too far from the hospital in Parkview. It took a while to get him up on the steps of his row house. By the time he stepped onto the brick and concrete porch, he was gasping for breath. He didn't go out much anymore, and this was why. Inside, my mother, Martina Coates, got him situated in his own wheelchair, positioned in front of his television set where he sits most of his yeah, waking hours. She waits on him all day and sleeps lightly at night in case he falls out of his bed. She gives him showers and even washes his ass. My mother is a churchwoman who believes that her reward will come in heaven. It's because of her that I'm still allowed to live in my father's house. The television was real loud, the way he likes to play it since his stroke. He watches them old games on that replay channel on ESPN. Franco Harris, I shouted, pointing at the screen. Boy was beast. My father didn't even turn his head. I would have watched some of that old Steelers game with him if he had asked me to, but he didn't, so I went upstairs to my room. It is my older brother's room as well. James' bed is on the opposite wall, and his basketball and football trophies from when he was a kid all the way through high school are still in his dresser. He made good after Howard Law, a real good, matter of fact. He lives over there in Crestwood, west of 16th, with his pretty red-bone wife and their two light-skinned kids. He doesn't come around this neighborhood all that much, though it ain't but 15 minutes away. He wouldn't have drove my father over to the VA hospital either, or waited around that place all day. He would have said he was too busy, that he couldn't get out the firm that day. Still, my father brags on James to all his friends. He got no cause to brag on me. I changed into some warm shit and put my smokes and matches into my coat. I left my cell in my bedroom, as it needed to be charged. When I got downstairs, my mother asked me where I was going. I got a little side thing I'm working on, I said, loud enough for my father to hear. My father kind of snorted and chuckled under his breath. He might as well have gone ahead and said bullshit, but he didn't need to. I wanted to tell him more, but that would be wrong. If my things was to be uncovered, I wouldn't want nobody coming back on my parents. I zipped my coat and left out the house. It begun to snow. Some flurries swirled in the cones of light coming down from the street lamps. I walked down to Giant Liquors on Georgia and bought a pint of Popov and hit the vodka as I walked back on Cubic. I crossed Warder Street and kept on toward Park Place. The houses got a little nicer here as the view improved. Across Park were the grounds of the soldiers' home, bordered by a black iron spear-topped fence. It was dark out, and the clouds were blocking any kind of moonlight, but I knew what was over there by heart. I had cane pole fished that lake many times as kid, and and chased them geese they had in there too. Now they had 3 rows of barbed wire strung out over them spear tops to keep out the kids and the young men who liked to lay their girlfriends out the street on that soft grass. Me and Sandra used to hop that fence some evenings, the summer before I dropped out of Roosevelt High, and I'd bring some weed, a bottle of screw top wine, and my Sony Walkman cassette player, and we'd go down on the other side of that lake and chill. I'd let her listen to the headphones while I hit my smoke. I had made mixtapes off my records, stuff she was into, like Bobby Brown and Tone Loc. I'd tell her about the cars I was going to be driving and the custom suits I'd be wearing as soon as I get a good job. How I didn't need no high school diploma to get those things or to prove how smart I was. She looked at me like she believed it. Sandra had some pretty brown eyes. She married a personal injury lawyer with a storefront office up in Shepherd Park. They live in a house in PG County. In one of those communities got gates. I seen her once when she came back to the neighborhood to visit her mom's, who still stays down on Lurie. She was bum rushing her kids into the house like they might get sick if they breathed this Park View air. She saw me walking down the street and turned her head away, trying to act like she didn't recognize me. It didn't cut me. She can rewrite history in her mind if she wants to, but her fancy husband ain't never gonna have what I did, 'cause I had that pussy when it was new. I stepped into the alley that runs north-south between Princeton and Cubic. My watch, a look-alike Rolex, I bought on the street for $10, red 905. Detective Barnes was late. I unscrewed the top of the Popov and had a pull. It burned nice. I topped it again and lit myself a smoke. Psst, hey, yo. I looked up over my shoulder where the sound was. A boy had leaned on the lip of one of those second-floor wood-backed porches that ran out to the alley. Behind him was a door with the curtains on the window. A bicycle tire was showing beside the boy. Kids be putting their bikes up on porches around here so they don't get stole. What do you want? I said. Nothing you got, said the boy. He looked to be about 12, tall and skinny, with braided hair under a black scully. Then get your narrow ass back inside your house. You're the one loitering. I'm minding my own, is what I'm doing. Ain't you got no homework or nothing? I did it at the study hall. Where you go? McFarland Middle? Yeah, I went there too. So? Homewood smiled. He had a smart mouth on him, but he had a heart. What are you doing out here? Said the kid. Waiting on someone, I said. Just then Detective Barnes, unmarked, drove by slow. He saw me, but kept on rolling. I knew he'd stop, up a ways on the street. Awful. All right, little man, I said, pitching my cigarette aside and slipping my pin into my jacket pocket. I could feel the kid's eyes on me as I walked out of the alley. I slid into the back seat of Barnes, unmarked, a midnight blue Crown Vic. I kind of laid down on the bench, my head against the door, below the window line, so no one on the outside could see me. It's how I do when I'm rolling with Barnes. We turned right on Park Place and headed south. I didn't need to look out the window to know where he was going. He drives down to Michigan Avenue, heads east past the Children's Hospital, then continues on past North Capitol, and then Catholic U in Brooklyn and beyond. Eventually, he turns around and comes back the same way. Staying warm, Burden? Trying to. Barnes, a broad-shouldered dude with a handsome face, had a deep voice. He favored Hugo Boss suits and cashmere overcoats. Like many police, he wore a thick mustache. So, I said, Rico Jennings. Nothing on my end, said Barnes with a slug. You? I didn't answer him. It was a dance we did. His eyes went to the rear view and met mine. He held out a 20 over the seat, and I took it. I think y'all are headed down the wrong road, I said. How so? Heard you've been rousting corner boys on Martin and canvassing down there in the eights. I'd say that's a pretty good start, given Rico's history. Wasn't no drug thing, though. Kid was in it. He had juvenile priors for possession and distribution. Why they call him priors? That was before the boy got on the straight. Look, I went to grade school with his mother. I've been knowing Rico since he was a kid. What do you know? Rico was playing hard for a while, but he grew out of it. He got in some big brother thing at my mother's church, and he turned his back on his past. I mean, that boy was in the AP program up at Roosevelt. Advanced placement, where they got adults, teachers, and shit walking with you every step of the way. He was on the way to college. So why'd someone put 3 in his chest? What I heard was it was over a girl. I was giving him a little bit of the truth. When the whole truth came out later on, he would suspect I had known more. Barnes swung a U-turn, which rocked me some. We were on the way back to Park View. Keep going, said Barnes. Trying to tell you, Rico had a weakness for ladies. Who doesn't? It was worse than that. Girls' privates made Rico stumble. Word is, he'd been steady tossing this young thing, turned out to be the property of some other boy. Rico knew it, but he couldn't stay away. That's why he got dropped. By who, huh? You got a name on the hitter? Nah. Blood came to my ears and made them hot. It happened when he got stressed. How about the name of the girlfriend? I shook my head. I talked to Rico's mother. I was you. You'd think she'd know something about the girls her son was running with, right? You'd think, said Barnes. All I'm saying is I'd start with her. Thanks for the tip. I'm just saying, Barnes sighed. Look, I've already talked to her mother. I've talked to Rico's neighbors and friends. We've been through his bedroom as well. We didn't find any love notes or even so much as a picture of a girl. I had the photo of his girlfriend. Me and Rico's aunt, Letitia, had gone into the boy's bedroom at the wake they at that at that wake they had, while her mother was downstairs crying and stuff with her church friends in the living room. I found a picture of the girl named Flora Lewis in the dresser drawer under her socks and underwear. It was one of them mall photos the girls like to get done, then give to their boyfriends. Flora was sitting on a cube with columns around her and shit. Against the background looked like laser beams shooting across a blue sky. Flora had tight jeans on and a shirt with thin straps, and she had let one of the straps kind of fall down on her shoulders to let the tops of her little titties show. The girls are trying to look like sluts now, you ask me. On the back of the photo was a note in her handwriting said, How you like me like this, XXOO, Flora. Letitia recognized Flora from around the way, even without the name printed on the back. Casings at the scene were from a 9, said Barnes, bringing me out of my thoughts. We ran the markings through IBIS, and there's no match. What about witness? You kidding? There wasn't one, even if there was one. Always someone knows something, I said, as I felt the car slow and come to a stop. Yeah, well, Barnes pushed the trans arm up into the park. I caught a double in Columbia Heights this morning, so I sure would like to clean this Jennings thing up. I'd be out there asking around, I said, but it gets expensive trying to make conversations in bars, buying beers and stuff to loosen them lips. Barnes passed another 20 over the seat without a word. I took it. The bill was damp for some reason, and limp like a dead thing. I put it in my pocket of my coat. I'm going to be asking around, I said, like he hadn't heard me the first time. I know you will, Verdon. You're a good CI, the best I ever had. I didn't know if he meant it or not, but it made me feel kind of guilty backdooring him the way I was planning to do. But I had to look out for my own self for a change. The killer would be got. That was the important thing, and I would be flush. How your sons, detective? They're good. Looking forward to playing Pop Warner again. I said. He was divorced like most homicide police. Still, I knew he loved his kids. That was all. It felt like it was time to go. I'll get up with you later. Here, Barnes said, right. I rose up off the bench, kind of looked around some, and got out of the Crown Vic. I took a pull out of Papa bottles as I headed for my father's house. I walked down the block, my head hung low. Up in my room, I found my film canister and the T-shirts in my dresser. I shook some weed out into a wide paper, rolled a joint tight as a cigarette, and slipped into my pack of Newports. The vodka lifted me some, and I was ready to get up further. I glanced in the mirror over my dresser. One of my front teeth was missing from when some dude down by the black hole said he didn't like the way it looked, had knocked it out. There was gray in my patch and in my hair. My eyes looked bleached. Even under my bulky coat, it was plain I had lost weight. I looked like one of them detectives you pity or ridicule on the street. But shit, there wasn't anything I could do about it tonight. I went by my mother's room, careful to step soft. She was in there in bed by now, watching but not watching television on her 13-inch color, letting it keep her company, keeping the sound down low so she could hear my father if he called out to her from the first floor. Down in the living room, the television still played loud a black and white film of Liston clay fight, which my father had spoke of often. He was missing the fight now. His chin was resting on his chest, and his useless hand was kind of curled up like a claw in his lap. The light of the television grayed his face. His eyelids weren't shut all the way, and the whites showed. Aside from his chest, which was moving some, he looked like he was dead. Time will just fuck you up. I can remember this one evening with my father back in around 74. He had been home from the war for a while and was working for the government printing office at the time. We were over there in the baseball field on Princeton near Parkview Elementary. I must have been around 6 or 7. My father's shadow was long and straight, and the sun was throwing a warm gold color on the green of the field. He was still in his work clothes with his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His natural was full, and his chest filled with the fabric of his shirt. He was tossing me this small football, one of the K2s he had bought me, and telling me to run toward him after I caught it, to see if I could break his tackle. He wasn't going to tackle me for real, he just wanted me to get a feel for the game, but I wouldn't run to him. I guess I didn't want to get hurt, was what it was. He got aggravated with me eventually, lost his patience, and said it was time to get on home. I believed he quit on me that day. At least that's the way it seems to me now. I wanted to go over to his wheelchair, not hug him or nothing like that dramatic, but maybe give him a pat on his shoulder. But if he woke up, he would ask me what was wrong. Why was I touching him all that? So I didn't go near him. And I had to meet with Leticia about this thing we was doing. Anyway, I stepped light on the clear plastic runner my mother had on the carpet and closed the door quiet on my way out of the house. On the way to Letitia's, I cupped a match against the snow and fired up the joint. I drew up on it deep and held it in my lungs. I hit it regular as I walked south. My head was beginning to smile as I neared the house Letitia stayed in over at Otis' place. I went I wet my fingers in the snow and squeezed the ember of the joint to put it out. I wanted to save some from Letty. We were going to celebrate. The girl, Flora, had witnessed the murder of Rico Jennings. I knew this because we, Letitia and me that is, had found her and made her tell what she knew. Well, Letitia had. She can be a scary woman when she wants to be. She broke hard on Flora, got up in her face and bumped her in an alley. Flora cried and talked. She had been out walking with Rico that night back up on Otis round elementary when this boy, Marcus Roberts, rolled up on them in a black caprice. Marcus and his squad got out of the car and surrounded Rico, shoved him in some and shit like that. Flora said it seemed like that was all they was gonna do. The Marquis drew an automatic and put 3 in Rico. 1 while Rico was on his feet, 2 more while Marquis was standing over him. Flora said Marquis was smiling as he pulled the trigger. Ain't no doubt now, is it? Said Marquis, turning to Flora. You're mine. Marquis and them got back in their car and rode off, and Flora ran home. Rico was dead, she explained. Wouldn't do him no good if she stayed at the scene. Flora said that she would never talk to the police. Letitia told her she'd never have to, that as Rico's aunt, she just needed to know. Now we had a killer and a wit. I could have gone right to the Detective Barnes, but I knew about the anonymous tip line in the district, the Crime Solvers thing. We decided that Letitia would call and get that number assigned to her, the way they do, and she would eventually collect the $1,000 reward, which we'd split. Flora would go into witness security, where they'd move her to far northeast or something like that, so she wouldn't get hurt or be too far from her family, and Letitia and me would get 500 each. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd ever had in my pocket at one time. More important to me was that someday, when Marquis was put away and his boys fell, like they always do, I could go to my mother and father and tell them that I, Verdon Coates, had solved the homicide, and it would be worth the wait just to see the look of pride on my father's face. I got to the new house on Otis where Letitia stayed at. It was on the 600 block, those low-slung old places that got painted gray. She lived on the first floor. Inside the common hallway, I came to her door. I knocked and took off my knit cap and shook the snow off it, waiting for her to come. The door opened but only cracked. It stopped as the chain of the slide bolt went taut. Letitia looked at me over the chain, and I could see dirt tracks on the part of her face that showed from where she'd been crying. She was a hard-looking woman, always had been, even when she was young. I'd never seen her so shook. Ain't you gonna let me in? No. What's wrong with you, girl? I don't want to see you, and you ain't coming in. I got some nice smoke, Letitia. Leave out of here, Verdon. I listened to the bass of a rap thing coming out from another apartment. Behind it, a woman and a man were having an argument. What happened? I said. Why you been crying? Marquise came, said Letitia. Marquise made me cry. My stomach dropped some. I tried not to let it show on my face. That's right, said Letitia. Flora must have told him about our conversation. It wasn't hard for him to find Rico's aunt. He threatened you? He never did. Direct. Matter of fact, the boy was smiling the whole time he spoke to me. Letitia's lip trembled. We came to an understanding, Verdon. What'd he say? He said that Flora was mistaken, that she wasn't there the night Rico was killed, and she would swear to it in court, and that if I thought different, I was mistaken too. You saying that you've mistaken Letitia? That's right. I've been mistaken about this whole thing. Letitia, I ain't trying to get myself killed for $500, Verdon. Neither am I. Then you better go somewhere for a while. Why would I do that? Letitia said nothing. You give me up, Letitia. Letitia cut her eyes away from mine. Flora, she said, almost a whisper. She told him about some skinny, older-looking dude who was standing in the alley the day I took her for bad. You gave me up! Letitia shook her head slowly and pushed the door shut and closed with a soft click. I didn't pound on the door or nothing like that. I stood there stupidly for some time, listening to the rumble of the bass and the argument still going down between the woman and man. Then I walked out of the building. The snow was coming down heavy. I couldn't go home. I walked toward the avenue instead. I had finished the rest of my vodka and dropped the bottle to the curb by the time I got down to Georgia. The 3rd District cruiser was parked on the corner with 2 officers inside it drinking coffee from paper cups. It was late, and with the snow and the cold, there wasn't too many people out. The spring laundromat used to be a Roy Rogers or some shit like it. It was packed with men and women just standing around getting out of the weather. I could see their outlines behind the nicotine-stained glass, most of them barely moving under those dim lights. This time of night, many of the shops had closed. I was hungry, but Morgan's Seafood was shut down, and Hunger Stopper had those good fish sandwiches. It was dark inside. What I needed was a drink of liquor. The Giant had locked its doors. I could have gone to the titty bar between Newton and Otis, but I had been roughed up in there too many times. I crossed over to the west side of Georgia and walked south. I passed a midget in a green suit coat who stood where he always did, under the awning of the Dollar General. I had worked there for a couple days, stocking shit on shelves. The businesses along here were like a roll call of my personal failures. The Murray's Meats and Produce, the car wash, the the Check's cash joint. They had given me a chance. In all those places, I had lasted just a short while. I neared the GA market. Down by Irving, a couple of young men came toward me, buried inside the hoods of their North Face coats, hard of face, then smiling as they got look at me. Hey, Slim, said one of the young men. Where you get that vicious coat at, Baby Gap? Him and his friend laughed. I didn't say nothing back. I got this South Pole coat I bought off a dude. Didn't want it no more. I wasn't about to rock a North Face. Boys put a gun in your grill for those coats down here. I walked on. The market was crowded inside. I stepped around some dudes and saw a man I knew, Robert Taylor, back by where they keep the wine. He was lifting a bottle of it off the shelf. He was in the middle of his 30s, but he looked 55. Robo, I said. Verdon. We did a shoulder-to-shoulder thing and patted backs. I had been knowing him since grade school. Like me, he had seen better days. He looked kinda under it now. He held up a bottle of Fortitude, turned it so I could see the label, like them waiters do in high-class restaurants. I sure could use the taste of Robert, only I'm a little light this evening. I got you, Robo. Look, I'll hit you back on payday. We're good. I picked up the bottle of Night Train for myself and moved toward the front of the market. Robert grabbed the sleeve of my coat and held it tight. His eyes, most time full of play, were serious. Verdon? What? I've been here a couple hours, staying dry and shit. Lot of activity in here tonight. You just standing around, you'd be hearing things. Say what you heard. Some boys was in here earlier looking for you. I felt that thing in my stomach. 3 young men, said Robert. One of them had them silver things on his teeth. They was describing you, your build and shit, and that hat you always be wearing. He meant my knit cap with the Bullets logo, had 2 hands for the double L's going up for the rebound. I've been wearing it all winter long. I've been wearing it the day we talked to Flora in the alley. Anyone tell them who I was? Robert nodded sadly. I can't lie. Some Bama did say your name. Shit. I ain't say nothing to those boys, Verdon. Come on, man. Let's get out of here. We went out to the counter. I used the damn 20 Barnes had handed me to pay for the 2 bottles of wine and a fresh pack of cigarettes, while the squarehead behind the plexiglass was bagging my shit, making my change. I picked up a scratch-out lottery ticket and pencil off the scarred counter, turned the ticket over, and wrote around the blank edge. What I wrote was, Marquise Roberts killed Rico Jennings, and Flora Lewis was there. I slipped the ticket into the pocket of my jeans and got my change. Me and Robert Taylor walked out of the shop. Out of the snow-covered sidewalk, I handed Robert his bottle of Fortified. I knew he'd be heading west into Columbia Heights, where he stays with an ugly-looking woman and her kids. Thank you, Verdon. Ain't no thing. What do you think? Skin's gonna do it next year? They got Coach Gibbs. They get a couple of receivers with hands. They gonna be all right. No doubt, Robert lifted his chin. You be safe here. He went on his way. I crossed Georgia Avenue, quick-stepping out the way of a Ford that was fishtailing in the street, and I thought about getting rid of my bullets cap in case Marquise and them came up on me, but I was fond of it, and I could not let it go. I unscrewed the top of the night train as I went along, taking a deep pull and feeling it warm my chest. Heading up Otis, I saw ragged silver dollars drifting down through the light of the street lamp, and the snow capped the roofs of parked cars, and it had gathered on the branches of the trees. No one was out. I stopped to light the rest of my joint. I got it going and hit it as I walked up the hill. I planned to go home in a while, through the alley door, where I thought it was safe, but for now I needed to work in my head, let my high come like a friend, and tell me what to do. I stood on the east side of Park Place, my hand on the fence bordering the soldiers' home, staring into the dark. I had smoked all my reefer and drunk my wine. It was quiet, nothing but the hiss of snow and Get Up Everybody, that old salt and pepper joint, played in my head. Sandra liked that one. She danced to it with my headphones on over by the lake they got, with the geese running around it in the summertime. Sandra, I whispered, and then I chuckled some and said, I am high. I turned and walked back to the road, tripping a little as I stepped off the curb. As I got into Quebec, I saw a car coming down Park Place, sliding a little, rolling too fast. It was a dark color and had them Chevy headlights with rectangle fog lamps on the sides. I patted my pockets, knowing all the while that I didn't have myself. I ducked in the alley off Quebec. I looked up at that rear porch with a bicycle tire leaning up on it, where that boy stayed. I saw a light behind the porch door's window. I scooped up the snow, packed a ball of it tight, and threw it up at that window. I waited. The boy parted the curtains and put his face up on the glass, his hands cupped around his eyes so he could see. The man, I yelled, standing on the porch, help me out. He cold-eyed me and stepped back. I knew he recognized me, but I guess he had seen me go toward the police unmarked, and he had made me for a snitch. In his young mind, it was the worst thing a man could be. Behind the window, all went dark, as did headlights swept the alley, and a car came in the light. The car was black, and it was a Caprice. I turned and bucked. I ran my ass off down that alley, my old Tim struggling for purchase in the snow. As I ran, I pulled on trash cans, knocking them over so they would block the path of the Caprice. I didn't look back. I heard the boys in the car yelling at me and some shit, and I heard them curse as they had to slow down. Soon I was out of the alley and on Princeton Place, running free. I went down Princeton, cut right on Warder, hung another right on Otis. There was an alley down there, back behind the ball field, shaped like a T. It would be hard for them to navigate back in there. They couldn't surprise me or nothing like that. I walked in the alley, straight off. A couple of dogs began to bark. Folks kept them shepherd mixes and Rottweilers with heads big as cattle for security. Most of them was inside on account of the weather, but not all. There was some who stayed out all the time, and they were loud. Once they got going, they would bark themselves crazy. They were letting Marquise know where I was. I saw the Caprice drive real slow down Otis, its headlights off, and I felt my ears grew hot. I got down in a crouch, pressed myself against a chain-link fence behind someone's row house. My stomach flipped all the way, and I had one of them throw-up burps. Stuff came up, and I swallowed it down. I didn't care if it was safe or not. I needed to get my ass home. Couldn't nobody hurt me there. And my bed, the same bed where I always slept near my brother, James, with my mother and father down the hall. I listened to a boy calling out my name. Then another boy from somewhere else did the same. I could hear the laughter in their voices. I shivered some and bit down my lip. Use the alphabet, you get lost. That's what my father told me when I was a kid. Otis, Princeton, and Cubic. I was 3 streets away. I turned at the T of the alley and walked down the slope. The dogs were out of their minds, growling and barking, and I went past them and kept my eyes straight ahead. At the bottom of the alley, I saw a boy in a thick coat, hoodie up. He was waiting on me. I turned around and ran back from where I came. Even with the sounds of the dogs, I could hear myself panting, trying to get my breath. I rounded the T and made it back to Otis, where I cut and headed for the baseball field. I could cross that and be on Princeton when I got there. I'd be on 1 block closer to my home. I stepped up onto the field. I walked regularly, trying to calm myself down. I didn't hear a car or anything else, just the snow crunching beneath my feet, and then a young man stepped up onto the edge of the field. He wore a bulky coat without a cap or a hood. His hand was on the side of the coat, and his smile was not the smile of a friend. There were silver caps on his front teeth. I turned and looked back on him. Pee ran hot down my thigh. My knees were trembling, but I made my legs move. The night flashed. I felt a sting, like a bee sting, high on my back. I stumbled, but kept my feet. I looked down at my blood, dotted in the snow. I walked a couple of steps and closed my eyes. When I opened them, the field was green. It was covered in gold, like it gets around here in summer. Round early evening, a gambol and huff thing was coming from the open windows of a car. My father stood before me, his natural full, his chest filling the fabric of his shirt. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. His arms were outstretched. I wasn't afraid or sorry. I'd done right, and had the lottery ticket in my pocket. Detective Barnes or someone like him would find it in the morning when they found me. But first I had to speak to my father. I walked to where he stood waiting, and I knew exactly what I was going to say. I ain't the lowest bum you think I am. I've been working with the police for a long, long time. Matter of fact, I just solved a homicide. I'm a confidential informant, Pop. Look at me. And that's the end of the story. Later.